All right, good evening and welcome to Oceanside Library's Poetry Near and Afar. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Ocaria Domingo and I'm the program coordinator here at the Oceanside Library. And I'm joined tonight by our poet in residence, Christina Rau. Tonight we are co-hosting and we'll be filling in for Tony Iovino. Let's review some housekeeping before we begin. First, our two featured poets will begin. We'll introduce them shortly. They'll begin with their readings, which will then be followed by an open mic. If you do not want to participate in the open mic, please let us know in the chat. So again, if you do not want to participate. After the featured speakers go, we'll let everyone know who's up and who's on deck. Poets can read one, as per Tony, non-epic length poem or 2 to 3 haikus. And lastly, cameras and mics may stay on if there are no distractions. If there's any background noise or anything like that, I may mute you here in the background, but then you can unmute yourself if you have something to share. All right, so now without further ado, I'd love to introduce our poet in residence, Christina Rau.
Oh, hello, everybody. Welcome to yet another, well, this used to be called First and Third, right? And then we changed the name to Poetry Near and Far. So hello. And tonight we have two poets who are from far and far, but also not very far. So within driving distance. So we will be enjoying their poems tonight. And then again, we will enjoy some open mic stuff a little bit later on. And again, I remind you, please put your name in the chat if you do not want to be in the open mic. Otherwise, I am making a list and people will be reading a little bit later. But first, we have two poets tonight. We have joining us from Washington, D.C. is Sally Toner. And then joining us from Connecticut is Pat Mottola. And these poets are going to read for us first. So we are going to start with Sally Toner. Sally Toner is a high school English teacher who has lived in the DC area for over 25 years. So the rest of her bio, you were emailed and you are feel free to read that on your own a little bit later. And I give you right now, Sally Toner.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. I have put together some poems in honor of the month of the woman, right? And the day of the woman, that is tomorrow. And I thought I'd begin with a poem that, well, it was written for a friend of mine, but it does harken back to a woman from mythology, Persephone. Persephone, we were the fruit, a mother's womb, skin tight, navel bulging. Our ground was soft. It swallowed us. And whatever sliced us open fed me sweet and bitter seeds from our empty spaces. To a mother's wail, I say I was okay with being queen in hell for a while. Is that why the reckoning was mine? The cleave of earth sucked all the color from the sky. Then the bargaining of men, and I am halved again. The leaves bleed green to flame to frost, and I must harvest my divided time. And so my next piece is sort of advice. It is another on the darker side, called To a Crocodile's Daughter. When I was small, I heard the hiss of whispers from girls waiting at the school bus stop, gossip about my hand-me-down Lacoste, my green suit, the fanciest thing I owned. I was a tiny straw-haired crocodile, young and slow. My teeth were blunt, and so they skewered me, peeled off my skin, then pieced it back together, a pair of boots, a bag, a coat. Then, with a rush of blood and baby, this lizard skin was newly soft. You are beautiful, but fair warning from the one who heard your cries from inside the egg, life will strand you at the feet of some with spears, panting, reptile tongue dangling from your mouth. Their words, worms in your ear, the mother of future maggots will make you dive back under. Still you wait, submerged except for diamond eyes. You will strike, leave a trail of foam, pull them down, devour them silent. Because one thing we creatures never do is roar.
Mm.
So it is month of the woman and day of the woman tomorrow. And so I need to read 2 poems for my 2 favorite women, which are my daughters. And, of course you have to do equal time. I have 2. So the first one is for my firstborn. And I've actually read it here before, but it's kind of a standard. I think was my first successful mommy poem. Those are really hard to write. And it's called Prom Afternoon. There's this meme I couldn't resist. Name your vagina, it said, after the last full movie you watched. The Miracle Worker, I typed. I'm not even kidding. I'm a middle-aged high school teacher, mother of 2, so my audiovisual entertainment consists of baseball games while grading papers and Mark Maron's honest depiction of addiction late on Thursdays, after the girls have retreated to their own Netflix binges, and conversations we trust are mostly not inappropriate, but you never know. As for me, I shared that meme in response with miracle number 1 on her prom afternoon. She looked up with my younger eyes and her father's full-lipped smile and sighed, "Oh my God, Mom, I never want to get old." I want to tell her that last night I dreamed of squeezing milk from my breast by hand. I recalled it all. The heaviness, the wetness in my bra when she cried, and the stream of warmth spilling of her fingers like a voice of her cell. The relief, the release, the necessity when the heart weighs so much. But I'll save that tale for now. She'll do her hair alone, as she's asked, and borrow my high heels that don't quite match her dress before she tromps on down to the neighborhood square for pictures, trying her best not to slip. And then this is one I wrote in 2020 for our high school senior. And it's a ghazal, and it's messed up ghazal. There are a couple of those in this collection, called How to Be Patient. A ghazal for Sarah. I passed your jersey hanging in the laundry room, hanging empty, stiller than you ever were, will ever be. It waits. The numbers on your chest, on your back, across the TV ticker, like you should have crossed the field, but now you wait. I wish that I could teach you, like I taught you how to tie your shoes, to fry an egg over easy. Can I teach you waiting? Maybe it's the same. If you pull the laces fast, they fray. You slow, you stop, retie, leaving everybody waiting. And if you flip the slippery yolk before it bubbles, it will bleed and harden in the heat that burns beneath, always waiting. How can I help you when my own patience fails? My loop's undone. I trip, my breakfast scrambled. I despise the waiting. Still, I pass an iris, tall and soft, her purple promise teasing. Beg her to untie her robe and show me summer. Wait, she whispers. All in time, I promise. If you stop and catch each tear of rain I shed, slow and barrel your hands into a trough of weight. I ache to part her leaflets in a smile, but I wouldn't dare. She's aware of our eyes. She'll paint them while we wait. So the next poem I want to read is actually, it was my first published piece, and it's kind of funny because my mother-in-law first published poem, and actually, yeah, possibly first published piece. My mother-in-law called on a phone call with my husband today, said, "Remind Sally that it's the month of the woman." And I was like, well, little do you know, I'm going to read your poem, which I've actually never read to her. Maybe someday I will. It's called When Lilacs Last at My Townhouse Bloomed. When lilacs last at my townhouse bloomed, They burst open nightly by my door with a purple smell that made me swoon. Then in the afternoon, I'd return to see my mother-in-law had taken to them with my cooking shears. Because in my disaster of a kitchen, those were all that she could find. My house is hardly an English garden, which is fine since she's French. I'd return to my toddler girl and see the crew cut my mother-in-law had given the bush, the flat top with that smell, the smell just slightly dimmed. On the kitchen table, she'd wrap those lilac locks at their tender, hobbled, amputated roots in wet paper towels and aluminum foil. She'd give my baby a kiss, swing the door open, and leave the bounty piled in her arms. Every spring for 3 years, she came, the same. And I'd stew because she never even asked. Then we moved. And through the years, another lilac bush, it found us. This morning, I'm adamant. We will gather some for my mother-in-law. The baby she used to keep grew tall and has started to wave me away with her own tree arms. I stand back, peering through this year's door to the back of the courtyard where the lilac waits, saying, "Sister, grab the cooking shears and take my children to the woman who shouldn't have to ask." So I want to read two from my chapbook, Anansi and Friends, which is it's about breast cancer and my experience with it. And one of them, again, with the theme, it's "If you were the woman and I was the man." If you were the woman and I was the man, I'd watch you undress, watch you tie the gown across your chest, pink rose petals over breasts I can't bring myself to touch, a scar I haven't asked to see. I would have planted other flowers before, real roses, white ones, your favorite that mated with the others to make a paler pink we'd walk by after this appointment. I'd curse the conversation falling to dirt, crushed with leaves at our feet. If you were the woman and I was the man, when you explain the trigger of being alone is not your greatest fear, when you plead, promise me you'll give me your need, even if the problem's me. If you were the woman and I was the man, the words "I'm fine" would be armless iron hands around your throat. I'd remember another mating where my discovery started this. I'd feel as helpless as the day the doctor's call broke the news, broke our hearts, me unable to ask for a goddamned thing. And then one more from the book about a very famous woman in the Louvre. It's called Lisa. Cloth covers rock and rubble over skin and bone. We play a child's game, chasing arrows around every corner to her smile, humming Nat King Cole. I happen to know she'd been stolen and sold, had acid and paint thrown on that face in front of mountains. She hid at Chambord during the war. I wonder, when they lifted the blanket from her eyes, did they dry like moth wings, plastered to the wall after a hard rain? Was she relieved, resigned, sorry her locks stayed long while other heads were shaved, their bodies fried? She probably didn't give it a thought. By then, she had already outlived us all. And I want to move to a poem of celebration of our vice president. Another ghazal that I wrote in November of 2020. It's called The Queen's Gambit at Harpers Ferry, November 7th, 2020 for Kamala Harris. Once the Queen's Gambit was an opening not in vogue, known to just a few of the masters for centuries, not in vogue. I stand on a bridge where two rivers meet, where three states mate. Recently, their unity has been decidedly not in vogue. I see an obelisk John Brown's Ford is like a chess piece waiting, begging that justice once again, or just for once, be in vogue. The shards of sin that bled so many are today diamonds in the river. The Queen's Gambit is so much more than just an opening now in vogue. The pawns to challenge, knights to defend democracy with their sacrifice, they opened up the board. So another queen, so in vogue, she can stride across that stage and say at last, we have a place at the table. I say, it's about goddamn time. Celebration is now in vogue. We've always been better with the single move, predicting danger, protecting ourselves against the next attack. The long game was never in vogue. At this fork of water and land, I imagine the fork to trap intolerance in its dark, tiny square, so that the checkmate of hate will be in vogue. And in this perfect afternoon, I watch a stranger dance with joy and clap. Her clothes are the color of the leaves, orange, gold, so much gold in vogue. With all this gold, we can move forward again. This light, the light of the Queen's Gambit, it's a light forever in vogue. And then for my last piece, there's, I wrote this poem and it was about grief. And then people said, no, it's about motherhood. And it is a poem about a woman. And finally, I realized, because I know when I wrote it, it's a poem for my mother. And so I'm going to end with that. It's called What a Mother Knows. When grief was newborn, I held her close. Her distance vision, undeveloped, the smell of her soft head so sweet. I had no problem giving undivided attention. I held her neck and the crook of my arm, fogged through the midnight feedings and diaper changes willingly. When grief grew, I severed the tether by sending her to school. I held my breath as the bus rumbled off, feeling better that I sent her with a part of myself. Egg salad sandwiches with olives and onions, mayonnaise on wheat. I knew she'd return each afternoon and we'd chat about our day as I braided her hair before bed. When grief was a teen, she became reckless, rebellious. She joyrode with friends, a bad crowd of disappointments and bad decisions. They drove fast cars. She tore out my heart without warning. Still, when I check on her sleeping, she looked so sweet and small. When grief left home, she still knew all, or thought she did, but all was calm between us now. She paid me wistful visits. We sat, drank tea, bourbon sometimes, all awkward at first. Then we laughed at her handmade crafts I hung on the tree for so many years before I packed them in a box. I decided it was time for her to take them to a place of her own. When grief is middle-aged, she'll have grown children too. Sad upon sad, tears upon tears. Also, truth upon truth, love upon love. We will have rounded our worlds for years to arrive at this same place. We will clasp our hands across the table and say, we understand each other now. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Sally. Thank you so much. And yes, everybody can unmute and clap if you feel like unmuting and clapping for a moment or two, and then that would be wonderful. Thank you. Yes, we can show love that way. And that was really, really beautiful stuff. So thank you. Again, I'll just remind everybody that if you came in a little bit on the later side and you didn't write your name in the chat, if you do not want to read, please do that. Otherwise, I got y'all. Okay, and so that brings us to our second feature of the night. Okay, so I'll get my notes out. Okay, our second feature is Pat Mottola. Pat Mottola teaches creative writing at Southern Connecticut State University, where she earned both an MS in art education and an MFA in creative writing. And you can read the rest of her bio in the newsletter that was sent out for the series. Everybody give a warm welcome to Pat Mottola.
Thank you so much for inviting me to read. I'm so pleased to be here. And Sally, that was great work. I really enjoyed it. I'm really thankful for poetry in these times. as president of Connecticut Poetry Society, the longest running poetry organization in Connecticut, founded in 1974, I ask, how am I going to keep members together without the in-person events? How am I going to keep poetry alive and thriving in Connecticut? But I realize it's the poets themselves who keep poetry alive. Poets are fortunate. We create our own community and we always feel connected. Poetry is our soul. And of course, the God of Zoom helps as well. So in my poetry, you'll find that I write about people. I'm fascinated with people, how they act, what makes them do what they do. And of course, observation is the key. I'm going to read a lot of new work tonight and also some poems from my books. For the first poem, I've been teaching poetry to senior citizens for many years, and I see a light come on when they get into writing their poems. One of the senior centers I worked at received a grant for an in-home art therapy program. And as well as going into their homes and doing visual art with them, I also had them expressing themselves in poems. And the stories I heard were gems, often a trip back to another era. One woman in particular I visited, her name was Dorothy. She was raised in an orphanage, and this poem is her story, and it will really take us back in time. It's titled Homeless, for Dorothy Z. In those days, your parents didn't always keep you or your sisters. In the 1930s, they gave you away like cheap dishes doled out in movie theaters, 10 cents for a movie and a porcelain plate. Forgotten on laps, they often fell, cracked or chipped, got left behind, odd pieces everywhere, disposable like you, shipped to aunts, uncles, or the Klingberg Children's Home, New Britain. Someone who could afford to put food on your plate. No questions asked, poverty spawning an incomplete set. Siblings were separated, sent away by bus or train. Maine, Connecticut, Kansas. No yellow brick road, no wizard, no ruby slippers to click together and wish yourself home. I also love to observe people in bars. It's fascinating to see who they are, what they do. And this one I wrote at a place called Sam the Clams in the next town from me. It's the most wonderful dive bar I've ever been in. And the title is I Called Him Chris. Every Friday night at Sam the Clams, he spun discs on a makeshift stage lit by beer signs that glowed like cheap lipstick. He never took a drink as he sat there watching the dancers bob and weave in their tight jeans and tacky tank tops. I sashayed around him like a gypsy seeking a home. I conjured his life in my mind like a fortune teller. His name was John, but I called him Kris Kringle. He looked like St. Nicholas, his white beard soft as spun sugar or angel's wings. The beer light above his head, a neon halo. His broad belly hung over his waist, bulging between stretched suspenders. One day, his heart skipped a beat, and I never saw him again. The memory fades in and out like cirrus clouds. I try to imagine where he might be, and I make up his story. Found a better life, a better bar, or maybe I merely imagined him sitting there, enraptured within the haze of the smoky dive and slow dancers, or conjured him up after too much tequila. Some days the sky shifts in just the right light. swirls radiant as a crystal ball, and I see him. I just know he was real. I also love writing poems, sort of odes to random people, always based on real people and real situations. And this one is titled "To the Woman Wearing the Black Strapless Gown in Costco." I don't know if you have a Costco where you are, or a BJ's, one of those wonderful stores that you go in for one thing and you come out spending $300. So, to the woman: your hair is loose, lips slicked, nails polished. You ignore the smiles and side eyes as you glide on your high heels through aisles of produce, paper towels. You wander by the rotisserie chickens, catch the butchers gawking at you as they carve raw meat. Their stares are delicious. I know who you are. You have no place to go, nowhere to be. Your last bad date lasted too long, and here you are the morning after, searching for something in this place with so much to offer, too many choices. You sample the foods of the day, nothing you would want to take home with you, but good enough to try. Okay, I also write about town characters. Every town has its town characters, and I think my town has more than its share. So the first one is titled "The Man with the Briefcase." He walks early every morning, crosses traffic at the intersection of Route 70 and Main, past the library across from St. Bridget's Church, some days a wedding or a funeral, and midday to the south end, past the Dairy Queen and the Goodwill store. Sometimes late in the evening, he braves the north end of town, past the prison. He's never in a hurry, lopes along like he lives in Mayberry. I know his distinct stride, a sort of swagger, as if he knows the way to somewhere or nowhere. I imagine he has a job. No, had one, but still believes he has a place to go. He wends his way in all directions all the time. Sometimes on my walks, I pass him on Route 10, say hello. He stares beyond me, as if he cannot hear a human voice, or won't. He has a past, I think. Doesn't everyone? Others in town call him Briefcase Guy. We invent a life for him, label him with nouns and adjectives: mysterious, misfit, lonely. We guess his name. Maybe he has friends, or not. Maybe what he carries in his briefcase is enough. And this is another one about a person in my town. It's called Almost Homeless. There are no homeless in this town, but there's Annie. She walks from Marbridge House on West Main Street, pushes her cart filled with bags and bundles, her long past blonde hair trailing behind, tied back with twine or sometimes a rubber band. There is a curious beauty in the pluck of her stride, the strength of her spirit as she pushes on, cares aside, thoughts adrift. She talks as she walks uphill to the Stop and Shop, where she plants herself near the bottle return like a native flower, guarding her shopping cart full of the salvaged empties she saved from the street. I teach creative writing at Southern Connecticut State University, and I realize how important these classes are to the students. It's where they find themselves. They learn who they are and how they fit in. They learn that they're not alone in their circumstances, and it lightens their mental load. I see their self-confidence bloom. So I started writing about my students, of course, changing names, except when they didn't want me to. This poem came about during, it was a very teachable moment. I walked into the classroom and it was alive. It was the most class participation I've ever seen in a while. There had been a school shooting in a nearby town, and one of my students was going to be a teacher, and she was totally freaked out. She was very, very nervous. So her classmate Gino tried to take her mind off it by telling her a funny story about how he and his brother argued about the definition of a sandwich. So I said to them, keep talking, pretend I'm not here. I took notes on what they were saying, and I promised them that I would show them a poem at the end of the semester. I was on a spot, and I really struggled to write it until I Googled. So this was titled, My Creative Writing Students Debate the Definition of a Sandwich. The day after yet another school shooting, anxiety filled the room like a stuffed burrito. Students helpless, hopeless. Each time the violence feels closer. Julia freaks out. She's preparing to be a teacher. My mind strays. Will college teacher prep now include a week at the firing range? I remember reading that schools in Pennsylvania are arming their teachers with bats and their students with rocks. Does anything make sense anymore? Gino tries to take Julia's mind off the subject by sharing a funny story about his brother and their debate over what exactly constitutes a sandwich. On his iPhone, he Googles the Oxford English Dictionary definition: an item of food consisting of two pieces of bread with a filling between them. Suddenly, class participation rises. That was written before the wrap, the taco, and stuffed bread. Must it be layered? What if you fold pizza in half? Is the Oreo cookie a sandwich? Is an ice cream sandwich mislabeled? And what about the hot dog? To be or not to be a sandwich, one student quips. Soon they seem to forget the hot topic, more focused on hot pastrami instead. A quiet student chimes in. Maybe they call ice cream sandwiches sandwiches because sandwich companies get money for it. But now we're hitting too close to home, talking about money and power and bribes. The NRA might interject. They all agree sandwiches are good, that cheese and ham in a hot dog bun is still a sandwich. But if you take two slices of bread and put another slice of bread between it, is it a sandwich? The internet has all the answers. So I Google sandwich and find the Sandwich Gun Club in Sandwich, Illinois. It's sponsored by McDonald's, home of the Big Mac, Filet-O-Fish, Egg McMuffin. What's in a sandwich doesn't matter. It's all food in the end, and it doesn't matter who pulls the trigger. Guns shoot, people dead. We all agree without the bread, there would be no sandwich. Without the gun, there would be no shooting. And somehow I know that Gino would stand between Julia and a bullet. I remind them they forgot to mention heroes. How am I doing for time?
Yeah, you're fine. You have about like 4 or 5 minutes left.
Okay. Okay, I think I can do these last three. To the student who brought her cat to class. Desiree, you were beautiful. You arrived late to your 9 a.m. class every day you chose to attend, sauntered in like a model on a catwalk. It must take you some time each morning to look like that. Perfect lipstick, eyelashes tinted, curled, stilettos that match your Birkin bag and your designer dress. Did you have time to do your homework today? Is it on the cell phone you keep checking? They are not allowed in class. Check the syllabus. And I'm sorry you plagiarized the one assignment you turned in on time. I'm sorry I found it online at the first search. Yes, that means you failed the class. Check the syllabus. You kept coming anyway. One day brought your cat, stuffed inside your Birkin bag, wrapped in luxurious leather, its curious head barely visible. Your service pet? Emotional support animal? I'm sure you didn't know your classmate, the girl who rolled her eyes at you, was highly allergic to cats, that she would become anxious, cause a scene. I'm sorry I had to ask you to leave. And you did so expediently, no fuss, only asking, does this count as having attended? I sensed your anxiety. Perhaps it was the F you earned. You say you are seeing a therapist? Ah, you're dating one. I see. And I have two more poems, if I may. I have a real soft spot in my heart for veterans. I write a lot of war poems. No one can imagine what a veteran has been through. Vietnam War in particular, when those young boys were drafted out of high school and sent to the jungle of hell. When they came home, there was no hero's welcome. They were spat on, and so many never came home. This one is titled Aubergine, and aubergine is a name for an eggplant indigenous to India, Burma, China, and Vietnam. I peel the thick outer layer of aubergine skin, tough as your exterior, dark as dried blood. I often cut myself while trying to expose the soft flesh beneath the surface. Eggplant. In medieval times, it came with warnings. Pungency quickly turns to melancholic mood, dark fruit, aphrodisiac to some. Now there is silence. 20 years since you came back from Nam. At home, the fields are wet as blood-soaked rice paddies. After the rain, I watch you slog the slippery ground, planting seeds your first day home, since you dried out in rehab again. Group therapy fails to break your hardened skin. Instead, you keep your secrets, bury your anger like seeds sunk too deep within the earth. Today, you dig the fields like trenches that protected you from Viet Cong. Now, the ones where you hide your wounds. I fix your dinner, slice through layers of eggplant, salt and rinse. Still the bitter seeds locked inside a shiny coat of purple armor. While I savor soft, succulent meat, you taste only bitterness. And we both bleed. And for my last poem, I would like to read you Letter to Private Bates. Turn off your expectations. Find a remote if you must. Turn off your identity. You are not the same person who left. Turn off the images of your buddy's body intact. You wear his blood on your face, splattered like a rash. It itches. You scratch with pills and booze, the only friends you trust to turn off your pain. Turn off the battlefield, the hush of the dead. Their silence reminds you to never sleep with your eyes closed. Turn off the war inside your head. You want to. Turn off reality. You were only 18. You reached for that last inch of life, but it was too hard to turn off the killing switch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pat Mottola. Thank you. And again, yes, you can unmute and clap right out loud. And wonderful stuff. Thank you so much. Okay. All right, so now we're going to switch gears and we're going to go on over into our open mic. So for those of you who came in a little bit late and still haven't told me, there's still time to tell me if you do not want to participate. So if you do not want to participate, put your name in the chat. Otherwise, you're going to read something because that's how things work around here. All right, so as Ocaria said before, please don't read an epic poem. We appreciate you. But you can read 3 haiku or 2 shorter or 1 a little longer, but maybe no more than a page and a half. Things to think about. Okay, so everybody's going to be on their toes because we're just going to go around the way everybody was in little boxes on my screen. And so if everybody's ready, just settle in. And we're going to start with Luis Acalio. And Marvin, you're on deck.
Okay, I'm following the theme of war and reading from my collection, Journey to the Heart Waters, a poem that came as part of a correspondence with a friend who was in a 30-year war in East Africa. And the whole atmosphere of war created almost a desire not to continue living. And so in trying to respond to that, this poem came. Beloved, I long to send you words to heal by and thoughts to soothe you with. Consider the deeper cause of things. Hard as it may be, try not to be guided solely by your surroundings. They may have grave effect and still not reflect the truth. Segments rarely do. Am I here to remind you of other realities and possibilities? Why you must bear this heritage like a cross? Could it be your Coptic background, the guilt and sacrifice at work? Will your pain and misery benefit your land, or is it your light and love that offers service? Please preserve it. You often speak of the responsibilities of the powerful, yet are they less ignorant? Is it about changing the ideology or unbending our beliefs that we need change? Let us follow the river's curves and bends. She ever resurfaces again. That's it. And thank you.
Thank you very much. That was
You're welcome.
lovely. Thank you. All right, so Marvin, you're up, and Brendan McEntee, you are on deck.
Okay, the poem is entitled Togetherness. His son calls me a freaking wreck, a disgraceful eyesore, a thing. He tells the old man, I'll buy you a new one for God's sake. It's true that I'm not what I once was. I'm frayed at the armrests. Whitish gray stuff from ragged edges has erupted. Rorschach patterns appear at the top of me where he inclines his head. My seat has a long, jagged scar, sinuous like the Mississippi, with a stuffing a half-inch thick, protruding against the brown leather. There is tape not quite matching my skin, covering other wounds. I might be a mess, but I'm me. Having enfolded him for 30 years, he has taken in the world, sitting or reclining while watching the TV, not quite as old as I, but it's no youngster either. He's loyal to us. I don't like change. These newfangled things are not for me. I like the comfort of continuance, he replies to his son. I only want the best for you, Dad. I'm satisfied, son, with what I have. He rose from me and stood transfixed when planes crashed into towers, when assassins struck tsunamis, Oklahoma City, as if he had been through the unseen agony. But at times he leaned his head against my fraying me, and closed his eyes and tasted victory with his Yanks or Super Bowls with his Giants and applauded humanitarian efforts and saw that good still lives somewhere in the world. I could hear his breathy, thank God, which even comforted me, who comforted him in my embrace. Perhaps we'll fall apart together. At the end, we might not have to go our separate ways. Has it ever been done? Two in one? There's always a first time.
Thank you, Marvin. Okay, up next we have Brendan McEntee, and then on deck is Brian Donald James.
Thank you, Pat and Sarah. This is called On the Way to the Agricultural Fair. They drove past the farmers burning their fields. In the back seat, her children exclaimed and clucked with alarm. The older child, her son, leaned forward. It's like a war, he whispered, his breath sour like wet straw. It's a clearing, not a culling, his mother replied. She didn't blame him. His culture was digitized, his rebellions cultural and calcified. It occurred to her, though, on a rainy day, she might take a hand torch to the overgrown part of her own yard, clear growths, repair and possibly restore the space, perhaps a rock garden. The skies cleared by the time they arrived at the fair, and the children were adamant they stank of smoke, their day ruined until they saw the butter sculpture pavilion and learned they could vote for the winner. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. All right, so Brian, you're up, and Dan Brady, you are on deck.
All right, good evening, everyone. I came here to support Sally from VA too. I'll just get right into the piece and I'll read swiftly. The park dwellers. We strolled past them quickly, the inhabitants of the park, with our nostrils held high, practicing their daily routine, and if we give a blessing, an extended hand for the exchange of pocket change, we never look them in the eyes, because we fear that we might discover that we are kindred, human, because we fear hunger, to be the ones looking into restaurant windows but never dining. See, they remind us of our vulnerability. They open the windows of our souls, the mirrors where images never change, but we say that their life is somehow deserved. To disassociate ourselves, knowing fully well that we are one paycheck away from this fate. A twinkle of hope still resides in the eyes of the children here. Their smiles bless passers who parade in a hastened pace. In this atmosphere, there is no haven of safety from the elements. They deserve warm clothes and meals prepared by loving hands. They deserve to have coats zipped up in winters by loving hands, to be tucked in bed sheets by loving hands. The old ones still dream of warm seasons past, memories of a kitchen with a large wooden fork and spoon hanging high on faux wood panel walls and checkerboard floors. They recall the garden tomatoes, potatoes, and collard greens, but with a stroke of bad luck, a bad choice, and addiction, they find themselves in a city of tents where crock pots are replaced by waste bins. Together, they are the phantoms of the twilight that disappear into alleys, the seen and unseen passengers traveling under moons and suns in a walking purgatory, praying for rebirth and rejuvenation, waiting for us to show compassion and mercy. And until then, they dwell, sit on benches and tell their tales, and on beds of concrete or cardboard, dream. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As we move on, I'll just let everybody know that in the chat, I did post the links to websites for both Sally and Pat. So if you scroll up in the chat and you're interested in checking out their websites, you can go ahead and do that. But right now, we have reading for us Dan Brady, and Dee Dee, you are on deck.
Well, hello, everyone. Brian the poem you read segues into this one because it has to do with hands. So, I mean, you'll see that, and in honor of this month and this day, this particularly painful piece has all come to mind, so I've been reading it this month. It's called Mother's Day, and it has to do with the news today and yesterday and the days before. Mother's Day. Whose gentle hands reach out to receive the bodies that are brought in? Whose gentle hands bear the simple folded cloth of white? Whose gentle hands then wash the remains softly, sweetly, one last time? A blessing of ablution. And who in silent reminiscence feel a tear trickle now and again because of someone's hair or eyes being familiar? Whose lips then, whose gentle hands then wrap the bodies, whose lips murmur? And who in concert bear up a corpse to then lay it gently out for view, its face set in profound sleep? Women are veterans all. They've been in all the wars, all the time, battlefield or no, win, lose, or draw. Upon them are visited those nightmare haunts and aching griefs which settle in and become memories, memoirs, mementos, those tokens whose silent display tell all that can be told without speech. What do women mean to do for the dying and the dead? What do they all pray for? How do they carry it all as life goes on and living becomes something else, which becomes anything else besides what it was once upon a time? How do their eyes, searching, see this world after dressing wounds so deep, so red? How do their hands feel that which can no longer give feelings in return? Whose gentle wish, whose gentle hands may well be as nothing is, just as the care they take is when tending their own torn sorrows, or in sufferance, how such has at them, no matter how long or far their simple journeys may ever take them. Mother's Day.
Thank you, Dan. That was
You're welcome.
beautiful.
Oh, the stuff I posted in the chat is an effort to find open mics that stream live like this one. There's lots of them there, but I'm always looking for more, and there's a way to, understand how that's done and help out with that effort if you wish. And thank you for hosting and keeping this going. I know you're stepping in, and I'm very glad that you did. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. And again, thanks to Ocaria and everybody at the library, and Tony, who's here in spirit and will be back, not next week, but the week after. Okay, so Dee Dee, we have you reading now, and Bernardo, you are on deck. You must unmute yourself. my friend. There we go.
Thank you, Christina. Sally and Pat, just wonderful, wonderful poetry. Everybody so far, great. It's a hard time right now. Ordinance. Hoarse voices become rasps of help and stop. Deaf ears open, world eyes turn. Ukraine, where's that? What do we get from them? Do you know anyone there? What language do they speak? What color is their skin? Why should I care? Voice from somewhere. With any grace, it's from within you. Care. Add prayers. Send contributions, money, clothing, medical supplies. Why aren't we doing more? Trying to comprehend how one ego destroys peace. Trying to preserve what's left of the world through pragmatism, which begins to smell yellow. Answers, anyone?
Thank you, Dee Dee. And let's see, thank you for that. Bernardo, you're up, and Robert Dean, you're on deck.
And response to Women's History Month, I remember fondly time with Grandma. I climb inside my mind. I do not know what year it is. I am listening to Al Stewart time passages with my grandma in her living room in Columbia Park Apartments in 1970 or something. And something is stirring within me in this reoccurring visit I have sometimes. There is moisture in my eyes as if tears might appear at any moment. The atonement so subtle is not so much from trouble, but if only I knew how fleeting time was, how few the meetings would be with someone I loved. She was the woman who fought my own mama for my possession. She believed Barbara was too reckless, too wild to raise a child. Even though, or maybe because my mother was her daughter, she fought the fight that ended with me taken from her arms, but not from her life. For months at a time, we would find ourselves living together over the years. So why this occasion? What is the meaning of here? Listening to this song, not 3 Times a Lady, or One Nation Under a Groove, or ELO, or Men at Work, or any other music from earlier times we both used to know together. His eyes on the sparrow in times bequeathed forlorn, or How You'll Never Walk Alone, which begins with When You Walk Through a Storm. Messages she planted, she handed me in song, echoing through decades after she is gone. You know, she used to be a singer in nightclubs in Georgia back in the day. She had dreams of being a professional, but her destiny was not Annie, but rather Bessie Mae. I did not understand her dreamy-eyed crooning back then, when she would disappear into the memories of what she had left behind. Where was she in her mind? What is the meaning of me being in this time at this time? But if only I knew how fleeting time was, how few the meetings would be with someone I loved. I touched this memory with tenderness as it deserves. And then on cue, the words emerge. Well, I'm not the kind to live in the past. The years run too short, and the days too fast. The things you lean on are things that don't last. Well, it's just now and then that my line gets cast into these time passages. I know you're in there, you're just out of sight. Whoa, time passages. Buy me a ticket on the last train home tonight.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay, up next we have Robert Dean and Larry McCoy. You're on deck.
Okay, I should be unmuted. Well, first of all, it's always great to come to this Zoom because I always hear and meet people that I'm not familiar with, like Pat and Sally. I enjoyed both of your readings. I'm glad I got to meet your work. This one is fresh off the press, just written this last weekend, titled Cruel and Unusual, and probably bump right up against the time limit. 1, the pock in my windshield seeks to grow into a crack, branch out to consume all the glass, swallow the known world. 2, in Livingston, Texas, a man knows already the loss of the known, the world, spends 27 years in a 9 by 6 foot cell, 3 steps from end to end, eyesight dimming, vocal cords less vocal, the knowledge of language like a comic book in a shrink wrap, where the ink comes off with the plastic and the superheroes are out of date. 1 phone call in 27 years informing him his mother died. 3, Socrates, New York, found after 2 years lost in a tiny room under the basement stairs of her grandfather's house, a 6-year-old girl in the grasp of her all too grasping mother, found on Valentine's Day, though no candied hearts, no pink frosted sugar cookies in the shape of love greet her. Father and grandfather and mother led away in handcuffs. What kind of solitary was hers those 2 years? Cruel and unusual, surely. Like the man in Texas, she's deemed no longer an escape risk, though Texas puts up a rough fight, not an 8th Amendment question, the rebuttal. 4, Bridgewater Township, New Jersey. 2 teens in a mall throw punches over something stupid one of them said, one of them black, one white. The cop sits the light-skinned boy on a chair and tackles the black kid, bangs his head on a trash receptacle, handcuffs him, the white boy holding out conjoined wrists, offering himself up for cuffing. Even he can't believe what's happening. He threw the first punch after all. Sent back to his chair, he is later deemed Hispanic. What amendment does that fall under? What is the known world here and how long till it's consumed? 5, Chihuahua, Mexico. The cluster bomb, yellow-headed blackbirds dropped from out of nowhere, burst on yellow houses and broken cement. Some small bodies flutter up and away. Most are instantly dead. Others flop and flop until they don't. Is this a world we know? We see no agency for this freak of nature. Pollution, one scientist offers. Another, too many birds on a wire. Yet another, unseen predator foul. 6, do we get to pick and choose our root causes? What sent the first small fist flying? What crime warrants complete sensory deprivation without appeal? How could a mother and father and grandfather do such a thing? When we open our Bibles and read, not a sparrow falls without God knows it, not a hair on our head that isn't numbered. 7, in the cardiologist waiting room across from me, a white-haired couple, him with a very peaked tent in his pants, the hard-on of all hard-ons. The boys in the mall would be envious, yet Miracle Man seems oblivious, as does Mrs. Miracle Man. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's the trick. Just sit back and let it be. But how can we? How can we not resin and polish away the pot, erase the detritus of what we have become, what we toss up in the glass of our own faces, before it's too late, before the world attains unknowability, before we become completely, irredeemably 8. Terra incognito. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, so Larry McCoy, you are reading, and Linda, you are on deck.
Birthday greeting to our oldest granddaughter. Hello, Rachel. Happy birthday. Number 28. You were our first granddaughter, and before my memory goes, here's a recap of your early use of the English language. When you wanted something from me or Grandma, you'd ask, "Do you have any monies?" The bike ride we took on Shelter Island was arduous, you said. A tire in need of air was responsible. When we pointed out a word you had misspelled, your reply was either, "That's how I spell it," or "Close enough." And who could forget the night you claimed that I was a poopy head? Grandpa got very close to your face after that, declaring he was not a poopy head. In turn, your eyes got very big. Happy birthday, Ms. Big Eyes. Thank you.
Larry, you're
Thank
always
you.
so much fun.
All right, so Linda, you're up,
Thank you.
and then Valerie Griggs, you are on deck. Linda, take it away.
Tomorrow is the 8th anniversary of the Flight 370 from Kuala Lumpur that was shot down. And I read this for a poet friend who doesn't happen to be here tonight, Julian Matthews. For Flight 370 from Kuala Lumpur. The scratch in the sky, attenuate. A malaise hung like oxygen masks, there and gone. It left a muddy confluence full, and now even the pieces are missing. 240 seconds, 239 for souls on board, and one more. For the one who never left, who remains with them still. Beneath the surface, stories bobbing like hungry gulls, none sure, all bloated, and finally, a wing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that was Linda, and then so Valerie, you're up, and then Teku, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but you are on deck. Okay, Valerie, whenever you're ready.
Escapees. An old man fishes off the pier, but stands on shores in an elsewhere country, before prisons and mass graves, snared bodies and souls. The paradise he was carried from, on toothpicks through the sea, in his father's arms, with his mother's tears. How many have been chained to rocks for bringing down fire? He catches and releases a small bass with cool patience. He tells his children and grandchildren with the steadiness of a cliff diver about their possible pasts and futures. He writes letters to politicians. Don't feed the coyotes. Liberate the mules. Trafficked children stare as the moon passes, leaving crystals and spider webs. Uniformed people ask, where are your parents? Who are your parents? But the question is, who counts these children as gold?
Thank you, Valerie. All right, so Teku, you're up. Am I mispronouncing that? Am I saying it right?
Yeah, you said it right. Yeah, that's
Teku,
Taku.
okay. Taku,
Yeah.
okay. And then Michael Cunningham, you're on deck. Taku, please take it away.
Thank you so much. My name is Taku, also known as Vachikepe the poet. And my poem today is entitled Put Me Down. Enjoy. Put me down. Don't lift me up when you are planning to let me go. Put me down. Put me down when you are planning to brutalize me. Put me down. Put me down when your heart is dark and evil. Put me down. Put me down when you want to appear all good, yet you are busy chasing away the good. Put me down. Put me down when you have got a fake smile and crocodile tears. Put me down. Put me down don't lift me up again. Put me down when you want to just score for yourself and not to score on my behalf. Put me down. Put me down when you don't have solutions for my life. Put me down. Put me down when you want to lift me up, swing me around, and throw me up into the sky, only to let me fall down on my own and in your absence. Put me down right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, so we have Michael Cunningham reading, and J.R. Turek, you are on deck.
I'm going to read one of my poems from this book. It's called The Guitarist. He wants nothing between him and the music. To him, a pick might as well be a prophylactic, latex making flesh dead. No, he will never stab beauty with a plastic tooth. She is his music and his muse. Her curves held her curves held close to him as the spotlight captures him. Sitting so angular, he is a Spanish exclamation point. She, a brown hourglass on his thigh. With one hand, he holds her neck. With the other, his long fingers find her hard skin of metal and wood, speaking flamenco, and she singing back.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, J.R. Turek, you are up.
Hi there. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Open Mic. Thank you, Christina. Gee, it takes two people to fill Tony's shoes. Oh, thank you all for being here. I was looking for something else and stumbled on this, and I thought, oh, this is Oceanside. Family history. Filling out forms at a new doctor's office, no longer pages and pages clamped to a clipboard. Now technology rules. Fingertips write answers, screen after screen, name, address, date of birth, place of birth, time of birth, climate conditions on the day of birth. Have I ever experienced? And the list goes on and on and on and on, and many things listed are unfamiliar to me. So I click no, 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 until the screen snickers and tells me I skipped one 3 pages back. Then it's the do you drink? Yes. To what extent? Monthly, weekly, daily, hourly, or more? And do you, I smoke? No. Did you ever smoke? When? What year? For how long? Why did you start? Why did you quit? Do I chew tobacco? I spit at the screen, it turns off and makes me start from page 1. I get to the family history page and I'm stumped. I have no idea whether my maternal great-grandmother had high cholesterol or a high school diploma. Did my paternal grandfather have chicken pox when he was a child? Did he play chess or football? Did any of my relatives come over on the Mayflower? Do I have hereditary gum disease? I try to skip these questions, but the screen flashes an admonishing finger at me, won't let me move to the next questions. Device beeps when I click next and fades to black when I click the red X. Flashing blood red text warns me to answer all questions. I can't. I hand the iPad to the receptionist, tell her I have to go. I have an appointment, and I do. One with a real doctor who talks, not beeps, who asks me what I know about my family history and give me the description I need for my toenail fungus. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. And I believe that was everybody who said they wanted to read, and then I didn't think I skipped anybody, but if I did, please shout it out now.
Christina Reid?
That would be me. Would you like me to read?
Absolutely.
Tony usually doesn't read, but I'll read. All right. Hello, everybody. I again, thank you to Ocaria, who is co-hosting this with me. And we didn't break anything, Ocaria. We did a good job. So
We did. Tony would be proud.
yes, I think so. So this is from my new book, What We Do to Make Us Whole. It's one of the happier poems, y'all. One of the happier ones. Gleeful. The joy of cows roadside sitting, standing together, as if I'd never seen cows, as if they are exotic. I suppose to some they are, to others sacred. Once at the Atlanta Zoo, a keeper told me to think of giraffes as giant cows, heads the same, just a different height. Giraffes are roadside somewhere, but not here. Down here, there are the cows, the green grasses, the flowers in blankets of maroon, white, purple, yellow, billowing, blossoming, blooming for miles and miles stretched ahead. So thank you. So thank you again to all of you wonderful poets who shared with us during the open mic tonight. So thank you very much. I am muted. Am I unmuted now?
Sorry. Yeah, I think I might have done
Okay.
that. I'm sorry,
I was like,
Christina.
no, that's all
I
right.
was removing the spotlight and I think I muted you.
Okay,
So
all right,
sorry.
great, all right. So again, thank you to everybody who read at the open mic. Give yourselves a round of applause, either muted or unmuted. Thank you again to Ocaria for hosting and doing all the tech side. Thank you to Sally Toner for featuring for us from DC. Thank you to Pat Mottola for featuring for us from Connecticut.
Yay!
On March 21st, we're all going to come back here and we're going to hear the works from Rick Christensen, who is from Missouri, and then from our own Evelyn Candell, who is from New York, from right around these parts. So that's in not next week, but the week after that. And I think that's everything that Tony would say. And
thank you so much. I just want to say thank you for a wonderful night, everyone. I mean, from our featured speakers to then the open mic, I was so moved. It was a lovely evening. So thank you all for letting me join you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you
good
all.
night, everybody.
I hope everyone has a good night. Bye-bye.
Night.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Well,